Good morning, everyone. Let's see what we got going on here. I'm getting Dennis and Tina here. There we are.
Hey there.
Thought I was going to have to show people how to edit videos.
That would be an interesting way to do things, is just to kind of throw you into the lion's den.
Well, yeah, it would be very interesting because I came here to learn how to edit videos.
Well, you learn faster when you have to teach it.
Yes.
Crash course.
And co-host me.
Yeah, I thought I did.
No.
Didn't I? Maybe I didn't. I meant to. I had the intention to do it.
Hello, Dennis.
Morning.
There's Dennis. We missed you last week.
Yeah. Well, since I don't have any employees,
Right?
I didn't figure it applied to me, so I thought, well. So you flying a drone, Greg?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my...
He's sitting on top of the drone. It's very powerful. It actually lifts him up off the ground.
That's a very powerful drone, then.
Yeah, it's the same one that my husband ended up getting. Is the same one Greg has.
Yeah. Here too.
All right, well, it is after 8 o'clock, so I'm going to start the process of going live on Facebook and all that good stuff. I don't know where everybody is today, but
So what's going on in California? So it sounds like there's a real crisis with the COVID.
I have no idea. I don't pay attention. I just stay the F at home and don't go anywhere.
Yeah, me too. Maybe once or twice a month I go out.
Somebody's proposing that we shut down for another 3 weeks, permanent. Not permanent, but like mandatory.
Probably wouldn't be a bad idea.
On Sunday, Minnesota has a mandatory mask order, 5 and older.
Just Sundays?
No, on Sunday, that's when it starts.
Oh. I was going to say, because every other day it's safe, but Sundays.
A day of rest.
All right, what are we talking about today? We're talking about video editing stuff. I had somebody emailing me just before this wanting to know about the HR session, and I was like, sorry, that was last week. Yeah.
So this video that's playing in the background is actually a good question for you to cover. So it's going up, and now it's coming back down. When it's coming back down, that's actually the same video playing in reverse.
Oh, yeah?
And they just don't have that feature in Camtasia, so I had to get resourceful.
Interesting. Okay, I think we're live. Yep, we're live. It's official. Good morning, happy Friday. We're live. It's July 24th, 2020. And this week we're going to be talking video editing and content tips and tricks. I guess nobody really was that interested in this topic this week because we have 30 people live with us.
Courtney's interested.
Courtney's interested. All right, that's all we need. Hey, you know what? All it takes is 2, right, to have a meeting. So
yeah, sometimes I can meet by myself.
That's true. It's true. Do you ever turn on Zoom and like talk to yourself?
I actually did that yesterday, testing this, or the day before, testing this video out.
Gotcha.
I always struggle with hitting record and just talking on my Zoom.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier if somebody else is there.
Understood. Yeah, that definitely takes some getting used to. But I know I got used to it. it's like anything else. The more you do it, the easier it sort of gets. So anyway, might as well dive right in, right? Again, it's video editing and content tips and tricks.
So we're doing video editing and content. Are you going to cover some hardware as well? Because I wonder oftentimes if the microphone that I have should be upgraded, or if I should get one of those windsock things, or what, if my audio is sufficient for recording content.
So, I mean, of course, the ultimate test is play your own video back and, gauge how your audio sounds, and certainly ask others, what they think.
I'm asking you, what do you think?
Well, I haven't heard one of your videos played back, at least not that I can think of recently. So send me a link to one, and of course, I'm always happy to listen and help. As far as hardware goes, microphone specifically, the Yeti Blue does a great job. Like that's all you really need. That's what I used for a long, long time. The only reason I got this baby is when I started doing the podcast, and the podcasting producers that we had hired, suggested that I get this for even better audio quality. And actually, this wasn't all that expensive. I mean, it's more than the Yeti Blue, but it's not bad, especially considering you do get very professional sound out of it. But a Yeti Blue, you're going to spend, I think, like $100. Maybe slightly more on Amazon, and it gets great audio quality. The one thing that I've noticed a lot of people do with the Yeti Blue is they point the top of it towards themselves, and that's not the way the Yeti Blue is designed to work. That's not where the actual mic is. You want to be talking into the side of it, and there's the side that's got the Yeti Blue logo. That's the side. So a lot of people get the Yeti Blue, and they're like, hey, my audio sounds terrible, and it's like, well, because you're not really using it right? So, but yeah, you don't have to, I guess the moral of the story is you don't have to spend a lot of money on equipment, I don't think. If you get something like Camtasia, so you can, do some screencasting, and a Yeti Blue mic, that's pretty much all you need to get started, and maybe a good light. Like I have a nice ring light that I have on right now, to make my lighting a little better. But you don't need that. A lot of people that I talk to, especially in the accounting industry, don't want to be in the video, and that's fine. You can just share your screen. So I think if let's put it this way, if equipment and the related cost is holding you back, don't let it. It shouldn't need to. Years ago when I first started recording, I had this really like cheap $40 Logitech headset with this little, it was like this little narrow boom mic that went around, and the audio was very tinny. The audio was terrible on that thing. And I watch sometimes somebody will comment on one of my videos from way back then, and I'll be reminded of how bad it was. But yet it still worked, because here I am all these years later. So, work up to whatever you have to work up to, but don't let the cost of equipment hold you back. There's no reason for it. So, Greg, what mic do you use?
It's the Fifine.
Okay, I've never even heard of that.
It was actually recommended by Hector.
Okay.
He recommended the Yeti Blue, but he said for budget, this is a pretty good one, and it's been all right.
Okay. Yeah.
But again, I haven't really tested it out for content creation, which I know I'm going to need to start doing over the next few weeks.
Right. God, now I'm curious what you're doing over the next few weeks. So as far as equipment goes, again, you don't need anything too sophisticated. I've never liked the video quality from the built-in webcams. Like if you're going to do the picture-in-picture, which is the little image, which you'll see in a minute. I've got a video that I've recorded ready to go that we're going to edit today. So I'll show you what I mean. But the little picture-in-picture, like where you see my live action video in the bottom right corner, and usually I'll fade it out after a certain amount of time. That comes from the webcam. So the quality of that video, if you're using your computer's built-in camera, is usually not going to be great. But lighting makes all the difference. If you have good lighting, that will sort of help any camera make you look good. The cameras just, especially these webcams, they just need light, and balance. Like you can look at my video feed right now, right here on Zoom, and you can tell this side of my face has more light than this side. It's not balanced. That's just because that's my setup right now. If I wanted it perfectly balanced, I'd have to have the light immediately behind my webcam. So you do the best you can with what you've got. My setup just isn't sort of conducive to me situating my light where I would need it in order to get perfectly balanced light. I'm not worried about it. I'm not doing a newscast. I'm just doing videos on QuickBooks stuff, right? So with that in mind, the main focus today would be really, editing video and also writing the content, getting the content written. I wanted to talk a little bit about that, and I want to talk about how to get going producing content. So before we even get to the editing part, I want to spend a few minutes talking about, how to get started and how to build like a library of ideas so that once you start, you can kind of keep going and keep adding to that library of ideas, right? In a recent email, I sent out something that somebody else had replied back, referring to one of the things I'd written as the 3 Gs. And what that stood for is get in, get the job done, get out, right? In other words, don't sweat it too much in terms of having the video be perfect. Your first videos are not going to be as good as the ones you're going to do 5 or 10 years from now. So don't worry about it, right? You'll get better as you do more videos. So expect your first videos to be less than stellar. They should be, but they'll give you something to look at later on, and like I said, you start to, like my YouTube channel, I can kind of look at the timeline of things and I can see, oh, this is what I did 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and 10 years, I can look back and you can see how far you've come. So it's a good thing, right? And others will see that too. Right? Others will, see the change and the difference in terms of, how you've done your content, now versus 10 years ago. Oh, that's funny.
If that was you.
What?
I was like, oh, we have a masterful video producer. I mean, James Cameron.
And James.
One person on the live Facebook feed says, I completely missed the sign up for this. Glad I got the Facebook live notification. So that's good. I guess that means that Facebook is now giving the live notifications again. Glad to hear that. Anyway, so here's the process. Step 1, get a list of 30 topics or ideas, right? I have a little thing, and I have a few different things I've used over the years for sort of tracking and managing content. And one of the things I have is actually an Airtable, and it's called 30 posts. And it's just 30, ideas. They're like potential topic or headlines, really, like what I might title the post, right? Jot them down, keep them somewhere easy to access. And that way, when you get a fleeting thought, you just add it to the list. And they can come from anywhere. I frequently get ideas when I'm talking to clients, for example. And as long as I make sure that my list is at close reach, I can pretty much whip that list out at any time and jot down the idea, even if it's on the fly while I'm talking to a client. Because that is where I get a lot of inspiration, is I'm working with a client and the client comes to me with a problem, and maybe I don't immediately know what the fix is until I work through it with the client. And then once I've got the fix, I realize this would make for a great video. So always be ready to jot down ideas. Have something you can use where, you can easily take notes on the fly. And I'll give you a list of suggestions for apps you can use for this, right? The top of my list, some of you will probably have guessed already, is Dynalist. It's perfect for this kind of thing, because Dynalist is bullet points on steroids, and it's got an amazing mobile app. So if you're on with a client, wherever you are, you can easily grab your mobile. If you're on your desktop, you can grab that and jot down whatever the idea is and then move it wherever else it needs to go later on. So Dynalist is a great place to start your list of 30 topics or ideas. Create a new document and call it 30 topics or 30 posts, right? Another one, Airtable, obviously great tool, for jotting ideas down. Also easy to access, on your desktop, as well as having a great mobile app. Smartsheet, another great tool to use for something like that. Google Sheets, and of course ClickUp, especially if you're already using ClickUp for other project management choices. And at some point, if we have time today, I'll show you how I've evolved a lot of my content creation process in ClickUp. I just love it because ClickUp just does everything, absolutely everything I need it to do along these lines. So So again, just quickly recapping the first step, get a list of 30 topics or ideas, or for that matter, even before you've got the list, figure out where you're going to put those topics or ideas, right? But have something that you know the minute inspiration strikes, you in 2 seconds, maybe 10 seconds, you can whip out your mobile device or pull it up on your computer and just get that idea down before it slips. And another piece of advice on that is write a couple of sentences explaining to yourself what the thought was, because I've done that where I've jotted down the idea and then 2 months later I go back and I'm like, I have no idea what on earth I had in mind for this, and I just had to delete the idea because I couldn't remember, right?
I was just looking at my list. I have scams.
Right.
Scams,
Scan
right?
what? Right? I've done that many times.
I think you were talking to me that day, Greg.
Perhaps.
So yeah, so make sure that you have, preferably one app that you've chosen, and that's going to be the app you're going to use for this, right? And again, it just needs to be even something like Penzu, which is a journaling app, anything where you can just, the main thing is that you need to be able to be quick on the fly, to grab the app on your computer or your mobile and get the idea down in a couple of quick sentences, just enough for you to know later on when you look at it, what you had in mind for what this post was going to be about. I mean, sometimes the title gives away enough information, but in case there's any question about that, write a couple sentences down, so that you remember. Imagine yourself 6 months from now having no independent recollection of what was going through your mind, and tell your future self what was going through your mind at that moment, right? And that's really the first step in this whole process, is so you get a flow of ideas and a silo of ideas, so that then when the time comes and you're ready to sit down and create something, sometimes you sit down to create something because you had a specific idea and it may or may not already be on that list. So of course, then you go with that. But if it's just a matter of wanting to produce content, to get stuff out there regularly on a schedule, then this is where you'll go to pick off ideas and do things, right? And as you accumulate more ideas, then you can do more things with that list. You can categorize them and organize them and compile them into campaigns and say, I want to do a campaign that's going to promote this service that I offer. And here are all the topic ideas that I have that will support that campaign to promote the service that I offer, right? So if I want to do forecasts for clients, then I want to do videos on how to do forecasting, cash flows, apps like Giraffe, they sent me a nice coffee mug. That's what you want to focus your content on. So again, as you accumulate ideas, it becomes more and more powerful and you can get more sophisticated with it. So step 2 is going to be schedule it. And I'll explain what I mean by that. To get content done, you need a meaningful block of time. It can't be something you sit down and work on a video for 5 minutes in between phone calls that you have, right? It doesn't work that way. You need to be focused and attentive, and you need to not have any distractions, which means, you're going to open up your calendar, you're going to schedule the time, you're going to make an appointment with yourself, and you're going to call it content production or whatever you're going to call it. You're going to make it a regular weekly appointment with yourself, and during this time, nothing else is allowed in, right? You need to focus. No emails, no Slack, not even Teams. Shut it all down for a period of time when you have scheduled to work on content, right? And you might want to use your first appointment to sketch ideas out, if you don't have any by then, right? So if you don't have ideas, then make that first appointment and then use that time to start sketching out your 30 posts, right?
Seth, can I do a quick ad?
Yeah, no, yes, okay, sure.
Okay.
Wait, no, sorry.
One of the things that's really helpful, we all always hear about the 5 for 5 deals that you can get, right, or used to be able to get from Intuit. And if you happen to have one of those 5 for 5 deals, I strongly recommend that you keep at least one of them for yourself as a playground to test out in, because when you have a client challenge and you need to try to show them how to do something, do it in the fake file that you have for yourself, and use something like Loom, or I use Zoom all the time, that you can record that quick little bit of video, and that is the beginning of your library. But if you use fake data, you don't have to worry about giving away anything that's sensitive, and you can start building and practicing off of that very easily.
Yes,
I do that with my people too. When I'm training other bookkeepers and on how to do payroll, I have a fake QuickBooks Desktop payroll file.
Yeah, that's definitely the way to go. Also, very conveniently, just yesterday I published a video on how you can use the QuickBooks Online test drive companies, to do videos on it. The only thing to keep in mind, which is why Matthew's idea is much better, is you have to do it all in one shot, because once you log out, any data that you've prepared is gone, right? And it's not even like you can log back in quickly. It's the minute you log out, it's gone. So you're definitely better off doing what Matthew says. I have several QBO companies that I use, two primary ones, because I have one that's really that I use specifically for stuff for the Bulletproof Bookkeeping with QuickBooks Online course. Like I used it in all the videos for the course, and I now use it in the webinars that we do. And I have another one that is for QuickBooks Online Advanced, so that I can do videos specifically on that product and the features that it has. And I have a couple of others. I use most of my 5 for 5 on those. Can you still get the 5 for 5? That deal's long gone.
I don't think so. I think they're gone nowadays.
Yeah. So worst comes to worst, start a new company in your wholesale account. It's $35 a month for QBO Plus, and it's worth it, especially when you consider that doing these videos is going to drive business that will probably yield a lot more than what you're paying for that QuickBooks Online company, right? Make the investment. It's totally worth it. So schedule it. So step 1, get your list of topics going. Step 2, schedule the time. And if you're like me, I need a lot of structure. So I usually like to have the same set time every week when I'm going to work on that stuff. Every week, those of you who get my weekly email, every week I sit down on Saturday mornings, and that's just about the first thing I do. I get up after I do my normal morning routine. I sit down with my coffee and I start writing. And that's one way that I know. First of all, I really look forward to that time because I really enjoy doing it. But it's also how I make sure that it gets done and then it doesn't get pushed aside. It is an appointment that I have with myself, and it is a priority over everything else. Because consistency is going to be very important too. If you're producing content and you can produce it almost like a TV network, regularly on a schedule, it comes out the same day and time every week. I'm guilty of not following that advice myself, but you should do. And my parents always used to tell me growing up, do as I say, not as I do, right? So do as I say, not as I do. Step 3, of course, you're going to write it. Okay. And that's it. There's just 3 steps to this. Step 1, get the list. Step 2, schedule it. Step 3, write it. Now, over the years, I've gone back and forth. Do I record it first? Do I write it first? But eventually, I settled in on writing it first. Makes the video much better in my experience, because after writing it, I'm that much more clear on what to cover in the video, and the content, the material, and the order of things is very clear in my mind. Whereas if I just hit the record button and start firing off, I tend to go on tangents, embellish, and the video that should have been 5 minutes ends up being 30. So my experience suggests. What's that, Greg?
I can't picture that with you.
No, imagine. Crazy, right? So how do I write it? Start with an outline, or just start writing. It depends how clearly you have the idea laid out in your head. If you're not 100% clear, then just start with an outline. Again, Dynalist is perfect for this, because then it's easy to rearrange those ideas in some logical order, and then you go between the bullet points to fill in the details. Of course, you can do it on a Google Doc, just the same. You could do it in Microsoft Word. I don't recommend it though. Sorry. Here's an example of the evolution of a new post. Okay, so we're gonna do a video today, and hold on, I'm just gonna scroll down and I'm gonna bring this up. I'm gonna share my screen. All right, so that's the video I've recorded, but first we're gonna look at the document here. Okay, so the example is I recorded a video on how to record barter transactions in QuickBooks Online. Let me check the live Facebook feed here. Okay. So first we need to look at we need to break down the title structure, right? So notice I put the title, and this was tentative when I originally wrote this, record barter transactions in QuickBooks Online. And so breaking down the title, the how-to that a lot of you might be thinking to put in front of this, it's become invisible and it offers no value. In Yoast SEO, they will literally tell you to remove those kinds of words in the title of a piece of content. they're valueless, and they're taking up space when you could be filling that space with important keywords that will attract visitors to your post. It'll be clear. Plus, this also comes across now as more of a command, like it's telling you to record barter transactions in QuickBooks Online, right? The implication is clear. This post is going to show you how to do it, right? And the other thing to check is that it's well under 70 characters. You really want your titles to be 70 characters or less. And so, and this, of course, is going to be posted in the write-up when I post the recording of today's video. But I've created this Google Sheet that you can use to test your titles out. It's real simple. You can probably easily recreate it. But so let's take this title, and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it in here. And it does two things. First of all, it gives me the count of characters, so I know it's well under 70. It's 47 characters. And then it also gives me the proper capitalized version in case it's not, right? So if I just type these out in lowercase, right, this is a formula called proper, which just converts it into a properly capitalized sentence. So it's a cool little tool that I use just to save me time and just to make sure. Just be careful. This formula, the proper formula, doesn't always work perfectly. If you have an abbreviation where all 3 letters in an abbreviation are meant to be capitalized, it will convert it so that only the first letter is capitalized. So sometimes there's some assembly required with this. But either way, you're going to get a link to this when I put this document up when we post the the recording of today's session. Next, after the title. Well, actually, no, still part of the title. We're breaking down the title. Who is this for? You have to answer that question. The title needs to make sure it's clear who this is for. So, of course, it's for people who need to learn how to record barter transactions in QuickBooks Online, but think bigger, right? Maybe some people don't know what barter means. So we want to start maybe with a more general definition. And your first sentence in the write-up has to grab the reader's attention by letting them know that you have a solution they need, right? A question is often a good way to do this and might look something like this, right? Do you have a customer who is also a vendor and you both owe each other money? Right? That kind of more generally describes the situation we're trying to solve for. And somebody who doesn't understand necessarily what the word barter means exactly in this context, this might appeal to them so you won't lose the person who thinks that bartering isn't for them, right? And that should get them. In fact, you can rewrite your title now that you have that, but first I want to finish the post, right? So next we're going to give an example, okay? And this is where you make up some data to illustrate the situation. So this goes back to like what Matthew was saying about using a sample QuickBooks Online company, because you're going to want to set up the data and to create the scenario. And you don't want to do a video that shows how to set up a customer and create the invoice and then set up the vendor and create the bill. You want to go past that because you don't want to bore people. You want to get right to the point. This is one of the things that a lot of people have thanked me for over the years, is I don't sort of waste their time with all the stuff leading up to it. I had done that in the past. I would do videos where I'd start with a completely blank QuickBooks company and start adding the customers and the vendors, but that's not what this post is about. This post is about how to record barter transactions. So I've learned over the years to, I can do another video on how to set up customers and how to set up vendors and how to enter bills and invoices. That's 4 videos right there if you're looking for ideas for your 30 posts queue, right? So don't waste videos on something that's supposed to be very narrow and deep like this, right? So we're going to set all that sample data up. And, this is something some of you have noted that I've done, coming up with fun names, with when you're creating your content, it just makes it fun. It takes something that can be maybe a little dry and boring and makes it interesting.
Last year, Raymond Reddington going against John Wick.
No, John Wick is, I'm mentioning that last year I did a series of videos with John Wick, using him as the example and using his business model. This post on bartering, we're using Raymond Reddington.
I'm just saying that'd be an ultimate battle I'd like to see. Raymond Reddington versus Wick. Wow.
That could be interesting. Although Raymond himself is not a fighter. I think Wick would probably kick his butt unless Dembe is there to protect Raymond, right?
Of course Dembe's going to be there. Anyway,
bonus points for those of you watching from home if you know who on earth Matthew and I are talking about. So so I come up with the example. Raymond Reddington owes us 150, but we owe him $250,000, right? And also I make this note, why not use big numbers? Again, it just makes it fun and interesting, right? And so to illustrate this, I only need a single invoice and a bill. Don't overthink this. Don't spend too much time. That's how you end up making the process feel overwhelming instead of making it enjoyable. You know, make your job easy on this stuff, right? So I only need one invoice for the customer side and one bill for the vendor side in order to illustrate what I want to do. And again, here I mentioned, if you're going to use the QBO test drive company, then be prepared to do it all in one shot. In this case, it's easy enough, but again, it's always better to use your own QBO company in case you need to, you know, do a few sit downs in order to get everything prepared and then record the video.
Real quickly, Seth, with that, one thing that I strongly suggest people do not try to do is do not try to record 4 videos in one piece that you're going to chop up and use for different sections. So like you talked about at the beginning, where you don't want to do a long video where it's like, here's how you set up a customer, here's how you set up this, here's how you set up that. As you build up to this event, be dedicated to each video, do like a video about each section, but don't try to build a long one and then chop it. It never turns out as great as you'd like.
Yeah. If anything, it's better to do it the other way around. Create the individual videos and splice them together if it's ever appropriate or useful to do that, right? Much easier to bring.
Because you missed the flow, Matthew?
Yeah, you know, in your mind, when you're doing it, you think about it ahead of time. You're like, oh, I can go through this whole thing, and then boom. But the problem is you'll still end up having to record an intro and an outro to each of those different videos, and you'll find it isn't very concise. So
yeah, and the other thing that's tripped me up along those same lines is at one point in the video, I might make reference to something I said earlier in the video, and when I've broken them up, all of a sudden that context is gone, right? So yeah, better, like Matthew said, to do individual videos in individual units, right? Another thing, by the way, about using your own QBO company is it's an opportunity for branding, as in one of my sample QuickBooks companies that I use in a lot of my videos is called Seth David's Nerd Enterprises, Inc., right? So that company name is going to appear in the video because I'm in that QBO company. So that's another reason to use your own company. And it's just a reminder about, you know, whose video they're watching, right? Plus, and I've had this happen over the years, if somebody does try and sort of download your video and then steal it and put it on their own channel, it's going to be very difficult for them to edit out all that little, you know, detail, you know, if they're trying to do that. I have had people do that to me over the years. One company actually downloaded one of my more popular videos and translated it into Spanish. I was like, cool, I like that.
Plus, Easter eggs are fun.
Yep. Yes, they are. In fact, one of my most popular posts, which is Bookkeeping Basics with QuickBooks Online, you'll recognize some of the alter egos of some very popular comic book characters in that video. In fact, in the video, I even invite people to post in the comments if they know who these people are. Like one of them is Barry Allen, if you know who that is. Another one is Diana, what's her name? I forget her last name. Wonder Woman. Her alter ego is Diana Prince or something like that. I forget.
And while this may sound like a tangent, it's actually really important. Like it's a good thing to do because it's engagement. You're actually trying to get the people engaged. If they watch it longer, they connect to it. That's where your video stuff has real power. So it's a good ploy to do. Yep.
And now for the write-up itself, and then I do want to get into editing the video. The video is about 10 minutes long. My plan is to edit the whole thing and produce it and then start uploading it to my website so that this video is going to go live today. So for the write-up, you can see how I've outlined what the bullet points might start to look like, right? So, and again, I just outline it, right? So I have someone who buys and also sells, who buys from us and also sells to us, meaning I have a receivable and a payable. I don't want to simply pay one another. Instead, we want to settle the difference. Note, it's much cleaner to just pay one another, and I make that point in the video itself, but the reason for this whole video is I've run into situations where for whatever reason, my client and their vendor / customer don't want to do it that way. Then we have to set up, so now here's where we get into the real meat of it. What's the whole trick to this? We have to set up a fictitious bank or clearing account and use that to pay the bills and receive payments on the invoices. Right? And then we're going to receive a payment on the open invoices and deposit them into the clearing account. And we're going to record bill payments on the open bills and pay them from the clearing account. Then if the clearing has a negative balance, it means we are Reddington the difference. And if the clearing account has a positive balance, then Reddington owes us. And the difference is then handled and transferred between the clearing account and our bank account, right? And so that's really what the video has to illustrate. And it's in the actual write-up, I'm basically going to go into each of these sections and expand on it to come up with the final written piece, which you'll see when I end up getting this published. I haven't actually written it all out yet. And now that we have the outline, we can, again, write up the detailed explanation, keeping in mind the keywords and infusing them where it makes sense. But now we can revisit the title, right? So originally we said record barter transactions in QuickBooks Online. And again, I don't love this because not everybody's going to understand what barter means necessarily, or they're not going to have the clear connection in this context in terms of what that means. So I just wrote out a series of bullet points, how to settle a balance with a customer who is also a vendor in QuickBooks Online, right? And then we test these. We can lose the period, right? But then I go in here and I test them. Like that one really spells it out, but it's too long. It's 81 characters. So I don't want to use that. Barter transactions in QuickBooks Online when your customer is also a vendor. Again, spells it out pretty nicely. Has the keywords all in there, but also a little too long, right? 76. So finally I decided, you know what, I'm just going to lose QuickBooks Online. I hate to lose that keyword, but I think I can live without it. I have lots of content on QuickBooks Online. And the second somebody sees the video, they're going to realize this is, QuickBooks Online is the use case. But actually, this process would work in any accounting software. It's not that it has to be QuickBooks Online. I just like getting the words QuickBooks Online in my titles because that's the audience I'm looking to attract when I'm producing my content, are people who want to use QuickBooks Online. And in this case, and this is where I talk about really getting your focus narrow on who your target audience is. I want people who have this issue, that they need a solution for, and who use QuickBooks Online. Because I don't want somebody calling me up and saying, Seth, I have barter transactions and I'm using some other software, right? I only want to work with people who are using QuickBooks Online. That's a choice I've made, and and my marketing and my content follows suit accordingly, right? So so that's an important consideration. I would love to have the word QuickBooks Online here. Sometimes as I'm playing around, I'll just literally stick the keywords in there that I want. I'm over by 3 characters. So can I lose anything? I could lose the word barter, but I realize I want barter in there because there are some people who do know it by that term and might be looking for that, right? So it's a question of what's more important, having the word barter, because if I take barter out, then I'll have enough room with QuickBooks Online in there. But it was like, which was more important to me? In this case, I said, I think the barter word is more important. Right? And then having this piece spelled out when your customer is also a vendor. I just know from having done this for a lot of years that a phrase like that is going to resonate with a lot of people because that's how most people, business owners, are thinking about this. Is I have a customer who's also a vendor and there's money owed both ways and I really don't know how to record this assuming we're not going to just pay each other, right? So in the end, this is the title I settled in on, is barter transactions when your customer is also a vendor. That makes it all clear. And of course, in my social media headlines, I can add in the QuickBooks Online. I can use longer form sort of versions of all this stuff, right? And you'll see in the video as we edit it now that I do make the comment in the end that we don't want to be owing Raymond Reddington any money. We want to make sure, because the way this goes, we owe him $100,000. We definitely, what do you call it? We definitely don't want to owe Raymond money, right? We got to get him paid. So
Don't barter with your life.
So
Don't
Tina
barter
says,
with
if I change your to A, it will shorten my title. When a customer is also a vendor. That's a good point. So let's test. First of all, always keep the original one. Tina may have a really good point here. The question is, if I change your to A, barter transactions,
Lowercase.
QuickBooks, not in a title. In a title, I think A would be capitalized here.
Wouldn't it be QuickBooks Online barter transactions?
I could do it that way because again, we have to, yeah, I could do, because then it makes sense, right?
And you're a
QuickBooks
fan
Online,
of typing out QuickBooks Online and not QPE and QPO, right?
Yeah, because again, SEO wise, it's much more likely people searching are searching for QuickBooks Online than QBO, right? So look at this. This hits the mark exactly. It's exactly 70 characters. So good call, Tina. That was very helpful. Now I get to have my QBO and eat it too. Right, and I see Kelly in the live Facebook feed also asked about using QBO. Again, when you're thinking about this stuff, think in terms of search and who's looking for this. They may not know what QBO means. I know that sounds surprising probably to us, like how could you not know what QBO means? But again, that's because we live in the accounting world where everybody refers to it as QBO. One of the things I learned early on about producing content is I have to remember that while I understand a lot of these acronyms and technical terms, the whole point is that the audience that I'm trying to engage with this stuff does not. So I really have to break things down in terms that they're going to understand, you know. And so for sure, people will know what QuickBooks Online means. By changing it to QBO, I may lose people, right? So that's important. Normally it would be, you know, in other contexts, it would be perfectly fine. But here we definitely want QuickBooks Online. And again, just when you're thinking about this stuff, visualize what somebody's typing into a Google search, you know, in cases where you would want this piece of content to show up. Let's see. So I'm just looking at the chat. So another comment is we can take also out. So when a customer is also a vendor. Well, the fact that we've got it down to 70 now leaves me feeling like I'd want to leave it in there. Because again, pulling this out, while it does really say the same thing, I think this provides a little context, you know, that's important here. That we want to make sure it's clear that the situation, the use case we're talking about, is that we have a customer who is also a vendor, right? And I just keep in mind, because I've seen what people get confused about a lot over the years. And the, you know, the issue comes down to people might look at customer, when a customer is a vendor, they might think this is more about, and sorry, I'm just going to turn Slack off because it's getting annoying. They might think it's more about where I've made the mistake and I've created a customer that really should be a vendor, or vice versa, right? So I've learned to think about all the possible confusions that could come up around something like this. So anyway, without further ado, let's edit the video. I have about 20 minutes left. The video is only 10, but of course it takes longer than the running time of the video to edit because you're going to stop and go a little bit.
While you're setting up, Seth, I want to point out a very important thing. When you're recording videos, turn off your notifications, turn off all of that kind of stuff. There is nothing worse than being on a roll and all of a sudden, bloop.
Yeah. And I almost always have the audio notifications off, but sometimes I forget to turn Slack off, and then that notification pops up, oftentimes right at the worst possible time, like right when, like Matthew said, right when you're on a roll. All right, so first, real quick, I'm not going to cover how to create the intro in here, but I'm going to show you that I have an intro that I've actually updated fairly recently. So it's in my library here. This, of course, is Camtasia. And I've got one for my Bulletproof CFO stuff, and I have this one that I've just called Nerd Intro 2020. So I'm going to add that, just right-click it, add it to Timeline at Playhead. You can also drag it down, okay? And that's going to put it right here on the first available track. When you record the screen with Camtasia, what I did before today, these two tracks drop in. This, as you can probably tell from the visual, is the audio portion of the track. And this bottom one is the video. It's the screen portion of what's being shared. And the little, I'll just move my scrubber out into the, where you see the actual video. This little picture-in-picture image of me is part of this second track. If I want to, I can right-click this, and I can separate that audio from that video if I ever wanted to. It's not often that I find a reason to, but I just want you to know that that option is there.
Did I miss the part where, did you say that you recorded this using Camtasia's screen recorder?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, ahead of time, before today, I recorded this. And yeah, and so, I mean, that part, it's kind of hard to show, but you just click record here, and it's going to give you some options in terms of the whole screen or part of the screen. Most of that's going to be very straightforward in terms of what to do. And then you test your mic and your camera if your camera's on. and then you just go and you record and you start instructing, and on your screen you're explaining as you're going to, I mean, when I replay this and edit it, you're going to see exactly what that looked like.
And that automatically separates the audio with picture-in-picture and the screen capture into two separate tracks.
Yeah, these two tracks are separated automatically, so they come in like this. But you can further separate what I have as track 2 here between this picture-in-picture image and the screen, which is where you're seeing QuickBooks. Right, so if you ever wanted to, you could do that. I haven't often found the need, but I want people to know that the option is there.
One use of doing it, which I think is what you just basically said, is if you do a screen capture, maybe you're recording, you've got audio on that, you can split the audio off if you didn't do a good job. And then if you would to record yourself to put as another layer and use that audio, that would be an example where you could cut the audio from one of the two video tracks, or just overlaying things.
Got it. Yes. Okay. Now, next thing, when I start recording, Camtasia gives me like a 3-second countdown, right? And then once it finishes that countdown, it starts its own timer and counts up. So I usually wait until that timer gets to 3 seconds or so, and then I clap like that. And what that does is it creates this spike here that you can see on the timeline. It creates that audio spike. So it helps me know where to cut things, right? So this way I know I'm looking for this, and then I see the silence for another second or two, and then I can see where I'm starting. So I'm going to go right in here, right? And I don't need any of this first part. It's just to make a clean break in what I'm recording so that there's no initial like delay in audio or anything like that, right? It's a good practice to get into. It also helps if you have two different audio tracks that you're trying to line up, because you can line it up based on those spikes. So it's just a really useful tip to do that. So always clap. If you find yourself, like let's say you get screwed up in the middle of the video, you don't necessarily have to stop recording. You can just, go silent for a second, clap, and go. And then you'll know when you're editing, where that part is that you're going to want to cut out, right? So there's things you can do when you really understand, what you're going to be looking at sort of down the road when you're editing. There's things you can do to help yourself in the editing process, right? So now what I'm going to do is I've got both of these tracks selected. Control click is how you can select them both. I can also go, because I don't want to cut the intro part here. The other thing I can do is outside here, I can click and drag down, and you can see how I can select the tracks that way. And while I've got these tracks selected, this little tool here is the split tool. So if I just click that, it cuts them up. And now again, I can click and control click and press the delete key on my keyboard to get rid of that beginning part that I don't want in the video, right? Now the next thing I need to do is this track that came in with the intro. It's a bunch of media grouped into a single sort of block, right? And I do that because there's different sort of things that happen at different points. And I'm not going to, recording an intro is a whole nother, lesson we can do. But just know that when you have something grouped like this, if I right click and ungroup it, you can kind of see how it comes together, right? And then all I really want to do is maybe change what's here. Although the way I'm doing it now, this is just how I've chosen to sort of do and brand things, is instead of putting the video's actual title, this is more the category that it goes in. I have Nerd Buzz and I have Notes from Nerds Desktop are the two major areas that I'm posting things in. And there's, a difference that I'm sort of making clear as I go. When you're producing content, there's almost like an ongoing story that you're telling people, right? And so part of my story is that I have Notes from Nerds Desktop, which are meant to be short, sort of helpful tips and tricks. Those videos are generally shorter in length. And then Nerd Buzz is the more long form stuff, like this, or stuff that's on QuickBooks Online, such as this, goes into Nerd Buzz. It may not be obvious to the person watching right away, but to somebody who's following my content, they'll start to get the idea of how that works. All right, now I've got just 10 minutes left, so we got to get into the editing part. The good news is, you don't have to do or know a lot in terms of editing. I'm just going to group these back up. I swear all you need to know how to do is zoom and pan. That's like 90% of it. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of fancier stuff you could do, but if you're getting started, that's all you need to know how to do. Let me, I'm going to stop my share and then start it again because I want to include the system audio on this. And as long as I'm doing that, I better shut off Spotify in the background. All right, so now we're going to share and share computer sound and share. All right, and go. So the other thing I need to do normally is, and I'll do this after the fact, I don't want to spend time on this now, well, might as well. I want to line up where's the right point to start the actual video against this intro, which has background music in it, right? Tina wrote me a comment recently that it was annoying because I started the actual video too early and the music was drowning me out a little bit. And the truth is, when I look back, it was just my first few words sort of introducing, but still, I can see where that can be annoying to the user. So I'm going to actually ungroup this again. Okay, and here's the audio track, which has the background music, which goes the whole length of the video, or of the intro, rather. So let's just move this out so that it really just starts right at the tail end of the intro. And these little blocks are transition blocks that have been added to these. And notice when I move my mouse over, it shows me that it's a fade. It's actually it's a transition, and it's a fade transition. And you can see from the pop-up tip there that it's going to last 1 second. The start time is at 14 seconds, and it's going to last 1 second, right? So now I can play this back and see how that sounds and make sure that it's not going to be annoying to the viewer. Seth David here with the world famous Nerd Enterprises Incorporated. All right, so that to me was perfect. You barely heard any music overlapping with my talking, right? And it's just kind of the perfect fade. Now, another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select these two tracks again. First thing to always do is click away in a part where there's no track there to make sure that there's no track selected already. And then if I click and drag like so, you can see how when they're highlighted by yellow that they've been selected, right? And what I want to do is go here to transitions. And I'm just going to include a fade. Actually, no, never mind. Let's go to behaviors. And I'm going to add a fade behavior to this. The difference between a behavior and a transition is something you do when you're going from, one part of one track to, to another track. Whereas a fade just kind of refers to the entire behavior of that track. So I just click and drag over to the selected media. Both are selected, so it's going to apply to both of them, right? And so now I've got that fade effect going. And so when I play this back, Seth David here with the world famous Nerd Enterprise. Okay, and then the next thing I want to do is I want to make this a little bigger, right? It's a little small. You can't really see me that well. So while I select just this track, you can tell from the little circles that go around it that this is what's been selected in the actual video preview, right? So I'm going to click and drag from the top left corner there, and I'm just going to make myself bigger just for the beginning intro. And then I'm going to show you how I'm going to fade myself out of this. Incorporated, bringing to you another special screencast. This time we're talking about barter transactions when your customer is also a vendor. How do we record this in QuickBooks Online? This actually comes up quite often, and it can get a little tricky in terms of how to record it. But I think the way that I'm going to show you how I do it, I think you're going to agree. It makes it very easy, very simple. In a way, what I'm doing there is I'm baiting people to keep watching, right? I'm kind of giving them a clue, like I'm trying to arouse curiosity, right? I'm saying right off the bat, I'm going to show you a way that I think is going to make your life a lot easier, right? And so I'm sort of egging people on to keep watching and not quit before the miracle happens, right? Kind of makes it nice and clean. So we're using the example of, and so as soon as I see that I'm starting to move around on the screen, I'm reminded to do two important things. First, I'm going to fade myself out. So this guy here is called the scrubber. I'm going to keep my eyes on my mouse that started to move over here as I back up the scrubber, because I want to back up to a point before it started to move. And you can also kind of see the break in the audio, which makes a lot of sense. And I give myself a lot of visual cues, like you can tell when I sort of look toward the screen, that means I'm going to start doing something on screen. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select track 1 down here. We're going to go to cursor effects, and we're going to add the cursor highlight effect. All I have to do is say, while this track is selected, right-click cursor highlight, add to selected media. And what that's going to do is it's going to put that yellow highlight around wherever the cursor is. It just makes it easier for the viewer to see where I'm at with the mouse. And then up here,
do that all the way back at the beginning of the track though?
no, once you add it to the track, it applies to the whole track, and then you can
mean.
add animations to fade it in or out, you know, at any particular point. Yeah. So next, what I want to do is I want to fade myself out. So I'm going to go back to track 2, which remember is me here with the picture-in-picture, and we're going to go to animations. One thing that drives me crazy about Camtasia is I would love to be able to reorder these things. I don't really understand the order that they're in. I would love to make it alphabetical. That's my OCD. But even just be able to customize it. So that's my feedback for TechSmith anyway. So we're going to go to animations. And you have 2 tabs within animations. There's zoom and pan, which is where we're going to spend most of our editing time. And in animations, you have some sort of, you know, preset as well as custom options. So for this, I just want to fade it out. So we're going to go no opacity or opacity, however you prefer to pronounce that. And I'm going to, again, right click, add to selected media. And it assumes that where your scrubber is where you want that animation to end, right? Notice the end point of the animation that it added appears right where the scrubber is, which is generally fine. You know, it just means that a second or 2 before. So now let's replay and see how all this comes together. Makes it nice and clean. So we're using the example of, okay, and now clearly I'm going down here towards sales, right, with the mouse. So now we're going to use the zoom and pan. If you spend all of your editing just doing zoom and pan, zooming in at the appropriate points and zooming out, you've got a perfectly good, well-produced professional video. That's all you need to do. Between that and the cursor highlight, you'll be able to show your viewer exactly what you want them to be able to see. So when under animation still, we're in the zoom and pan tab, and we're working over here. I want to focus in on what am I doing with my mouse? I want the viewer to see that clearly. Also, I want to get rid of the sidebar from the view. When I recently reinstalled Camtasia, I forgot to adjust the screen section that's being recorded to exclude this. So we can do it here. If I take the top left corner of the zoom and pan and just click and drag down, I can sort of get that out of the view. It's just a distraction. People don't need to see my applications tray, right? Which I happen to keep on the left. Most people have it on the bottom. Okay, and I can do it ever so slightly more because I just want QuickBooks Online there. I don't want there to be any sort of margin. There we go, right? Those little details matter. So I do take time to get very sort of particular about that. So that gets rid of the sidebar, but then I also want to zoom in really close on what I'm doing here. So from the top right corner, I'm going to click and drag down. And that might be good enough. Keep in mind that the view I'm working on is a lot smaller than the way it's going to look when the finished product is up on someone's screen or up on YouTube, right? So you don't have to go in as closely as you think, and you want to keep the context visible in terms of what they're looking at. I can probably go in a little further on this, right? Okay, and now let's keep playing and see what I'm going to do next. My customer, Raymond Reddington, who also happens to be a vendor. If I run my balance sheet, you'll see that and so right there, as soon as I'm done running the balance sheet, I'm going to use these 2 little arrows to step back 1 frame at a time. And I'm tapping rapidly with my mouse so I can see where the screen sort of transitions. So right at this point, I can find the exact frame where, boom, it goes blank. So that means that's when I actually click balance sheet over here. And so that's where I want to come back here and click scale to fit. Now anytime you're zooming and panning, if you make a change, it assumes you want to make that change at that point in the timeline, and it inserts the animations, in this case on both tracks, right? So I can click scale to fit, which kind of resets the whole thing. And then I can bring my top left corner back in to once again eliminate that the application tray. See that I prepared it with a balance in accounts receivable from him for $150,000, a balance in accounts payable to him for $250,000. So we owe him more than he owes us, and you don't want to mess around with a guy like Raymond Reddington. We need to settle this balance quickly. So here is how we do it, and just so you can see some of the setup on this, when I set up the customer, what I do is I put his name in here with a little C in parentheses, so I know that's the customer version of his name. Now I went up into my tabs, right? And notice because of the way I panned in, it kind of cuts that off. That might screw up a viewer. So let me back up. And again, I want to back up to the point just before I did that. So now I can use these arrows to find the exact moment, and I can click and hold. So I'll just kind of step through a frame at a time. So that's where I'm going up there. So now back over here on the zoom and pan. So notice I'm spending almost all of my time here. All I have to do is click in here and pan back up so that they can see the tab where I'm going, right? Again, the point is to make sure that the viewer never loses context. In here with a little C in parentheses. So I know that's the customer version of his name. You can see it's got the receivable there. And I don't think I went far enough up on that. So let's go. No, I guess that's as far up as it goes. It just felt like I was still missing something. So I know that's the customer version of his name. You can see it's got the receivable there of 150,000. I'm going to duplicate the tab. And of course, on the vendor side, we're going to do something similar. We're going to put his name in there with the letter V. So I know very easily when I'm pulling the name up in a drop down, which is the customer version of him. And all right, now it's after 9 o'clock. So if you have to go, I apologize. I meant to get into this a little sooner, but I'm going to continue for those who can and want to stick around. For everyone else, of course, you'll have the recording up by tomorrow, which is the vendor. So here is what we're going to do. Let's go to the chart of accounts. I'll leave this here just for reference and duplicate the tab once more. And let's go to the chart of accounts. And the first thing I want to do is I'm going to add a fictitious bank account. Okay, cash on hand is fine. We're going to call this barter. Now you could zoom in over here, but I've learned it's not necessary. You have plenty of context, so I'm not going to do it. But if you're looking to, if you're looking to do more sort of editing, this is a point where you could zoom in, just get a little closer. But what I've learned is even with this much zoom, when the final product gets produced, it's going to be plenty clear and plenty big on the screen. Clearing, right? Another clearing account. I love my clearing accounts. So we're going to create a dummy bank account, call it barter clearing, and save and close. And this is the whole secret to this, because now what we're going to do, because we're not going to necessarily pay, the cleanest thing, by the way, is not to do any of this and just agree that you'll pay the vendor, you'll pay the person what you owe him, and he can send you a check for what he owes you. That's the cleanest way, because then we just receive a payment on the invoice, deposit it into our bank account, then we write him a check for the bill that we owe him, and that comes out of our bank account, and it's clean. But I know I've worked with a lot of clients, companies over the years who, for whatever reason, they don't want to do that. They just want to net it all out, right, and do the barter thing. Fine. So here's what we'll do. Same process, but we do it through a fake bank account, such as this one. So first, let's get paid. Okay, so we'll go to New and Receive Payment. And we'll pick Raymond Reddington, the customer. And let's put it in for today. And we'll just check off the invoice. But the deposit to is going to be that barter clearing. Okay, save and close. Because we're done there. So now we've got $150,000 in barter clearing. Now we're going to pay him also out of this bank account. We're going to end up with a negative balance in here. I'll explain what that means and what we do with it. So now we'll go to Pay Bills. And we're going to pay it out of that same barter clearing. Also on today, we're going to pay Raymond $250,000, right? Notice it's even warning me because of the barter clearing account. So here, just because I'm talking about it and it's sort of off in that corner, I'll zoom in. Only has 150. It's warning me my new account balance is going to be negative $100,000. Doesn't matter. And let's say because I'm moving my mouse over something like this that I want to, at least for a minute, fade out the cursor highlight. What I can do on that is, again, I'll go to, that cursor is on the screen track, right, which is track 1. And I can go to Animations, and I'll do a custom animation. So I'm going to just right-click and choose Add to Selected Media, right? And so I've got the custom animation there. And notice at the top right, you have actually 4 different tabs here. This is for the video itself. This is for the audio. This is for the mouse. right? I happen to be on the mouse probably because the last thing I did was turn on the cursor effect, right? So we're looking at the properties of the mouse itself, which includes the highlight, and we have this opacity setting. So I've added this transition here, this custom animation, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the opacity to 0, and notice on the actual video now the cursor highlight goes away, because you want to make sure the highlight's not obscuring what I'm trying to show people. And then we'll add another custom animation to fade it back in another few seconds once we're done here, because it's not real money. And of course, now that I've saved it, I want to back up on the screen zoom. So I'll back up here. I want to find the exact frame where that happened. So right here, looks like I found the spot exactly here. We'll go back to zoom and pan, scale to fit to reset it, and I'll zoom back down from the top. Okay, and then whenever I make edits like this, especially so close together, I always want to back up and just replay it and make sure that it all looks smooth. $100,000 doesn't matter because it's not real money. So that happened a little fast. So what I want to do two things actually. I want to back this one up. It's going to be negative $100,000 doesn't matter because it's not real money. Okay, and then that actually worked. It was a little fast. I didn't like how fast it went from the time I saved the transaction, but nothing I can do about that now because I just didn't linger there very long in the video itself. But I backed up, turning off the cursor so it gets turned off a moment sooner. Negative $100,000 doesn't matter because it's not real money, right? It's just to net out the whole difference in one place. Now, of course, what this says is that we owe him. So now I've got the mouse kind of pointing at that balance that's left in the barter clearing account, and it may not be obvious to the viewer where that is. So I'm going to turn the cursor highlight back on. I'm just backing up on the timeline to figure out exactly where I want to do that. So here, as you can see, this is where it gave me the notification that that bill was marked as paid. So this might be a good time to do it. So again, I'm back on track 1. I'll go to animations and just add another custom animation. And I'm still in the cursor properties here. And I'm just going to hit this reset button on the opacity, right? And you'll notice that brings the cursor highlight right back in. So it's once again clear to the eye where my cursor is. Difference in one place. Now, of course, what this says is that we owe him $100,000, right? And funny enough, we have exactly $100,000 in our Wells Fargo bank account here. So what we're going to do is now we're going to write another check to Raymond, and this is going to be Raymond Reddington, the vendor, although it doesn't actually matter in this case because the bill's paid, right? There's no more receivable or payable. If I go into these tabs, this should be zeroed out. I guess I need to refresh it. Right, so there he is. That's 0 on the vendor's side. Refresh my page just to make sure. There's Raymond Reddington, the customer. No longer owes us anything, right? So that all zeroed out. But now the difference is, all right, let me see something here because if I can, I want to show you another important little trick. So you heard me clear my throat for a second, right? I want to try and edit that out because that can be annoying. So that all zeroed out, but okay, so it's right there. I had my eye on the audio here, and it's right at this little spike. So here's what we want to do. I'm going to back up to right before that because I have to be careful. I want to edit out the clearing of my throat without editing out any of the actual words. This can get challenging sometimes. So over here, you might have noticed right at the beginning, this is the zoom on this actual timeline. And over here, I had increased the zoom when we started. I didn't really point the fact out. I just did it. But notice there's room to zoom in even further. And so I want to zoom as far in as I can go because that gives me very clear visibility, especially at the audio peaks and troughs. So I can figure out exactly what to edit out there. So I'm going to back up here and replay it and isolate exactly where that noise is. Us anything, right? So that all zeroed out. But now, okay, so it's this little spike right here. Right, we're getting very detailed, but I want to teach you how to do this because this is a critical skill. You're going to run into this, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my mouse just before that spike, leave a little bit of room, you know, because down here you can see where there's no audio. That means I was pausing and taking a breath, right? And then notice on either side of the scrubber, I have a little green thing here and a little red thing here to the right. What I want to do is, since I situated my scrubber to the left of what I want to cut out, I'm going to click on the red one, and I'm going to drag out frame by frame. And I think I want to get it right up to there. I think that little bump is something else. We'll find out. So while I've got this sort of range selected, I'm going to click my scissor tool here. Okay, and that's going to cut that section out. Now let's replay it and see how that sounds. But now the difference, that was beautiful. Smooth, seamless. I got the clearing of my throat out without cutting out any of my words. Right? So I'm going to zoom back out and play that back again just to make sure. No longer owes us anything, right? So that all zeroed out, but now the difference is kind of sitting reflected in that barter account, which is negative 100,000. So we're going to write a check. And again, I was up in the tabs. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the last time that I zoomed. And fix it. So I think that was here. Zoom and pan. And I'll move that up to the top. And then I should have sort of noted where I was, but I can figure it out because I can see where I clipped the track. You can always see where you clipped the track because it gives you this little dotted line right there. Zeroed out, but now the difference is kind of sitting reflected. And if you ever want to mark a point in the timeline because you want to go back to it and you don't want to lose your place, this little guy here will either show or hide the quiz or the marker track. So I can click this little arrow and it adds this. It's very thin, but you can see it now as I move my mouse across. So I can add markers, and sometimes I'll do this. If I'm in the middle of editing and all of a sudden I have to go do something, I'll put this in and put something like stopped here. Right, so I know exactly where to pick up, and then of course I'll save it. And then I can hide that to get it out of the way and keep going and then go back to it later when I need to. Negative 100,000. So we're going to write a check out of our actual Wells Fargo bank account. And for the category, we're going to put that barter clearing. We're just going to record it to that to close that out. Right? But this is going to be an actual check, which we'll print and send or pay them online, however we're going to do that. Okay, and then in the description, we can put, you know, difference in balance owed versus what he owed us. Okay. I don't know why I have to do that. It's my OCD. It drives me crazy when that bleeds onto another line. Anyway, save and close. Missing class, that's fine. Okay, and now you can see the debt is settled. The barter clearing has now zeroed out. Of course, I have no money left in my bank account, so I'm sort of screwed there, but at least I don't have Raymond Reddington coming after me to collect. That, my friends, is as simple as it is. You can do this all day long with as many people as you need to record barter transactions for. The only other question might be, how do you track what? All right, so I'm going to kind of skip ahead here, you know, in the interest of time. What I started to get into here, this is a perfect example of embellishing in a way that you don't need to. You could reserve it for a separate video. I started going into how you could try to use something like classes to track within that barter clearing account whose amounts you have that you're washing through. But it fails because I have Raymond in there as both customer and vendor. And the class worked well with the vendor, but it didn't work well with both. I wasn't able to use classes to easily show here was the money in from Raymond versus the money out from Raymond. So I'm going to edit that whole section out, and I left it in here so that I could show you exactly how I'm going to do that. So what I did was, and you could hear it in my voice really, the diction in my voice, I was kind of wrapping up, and then it was like, I remember in my head, the thought popped in, oh, I should show how to do this. And never, ever do something that you didn't plan to do. That's, and still, even all these years later, I have to remind myself of these lessons. So let's play that back. I want to find the exact point on the timeline that I want to cut, because I have to cut the whole part where I'm talking about using classes, but then I need to leave in the very end piece of the video where I kind of wrap up, right? So we're going to need maybe another 2 minutes here to finish up. Day long with as many people as you need to record barter transactions for. The only other, so right there, right where I start, the only other, right? As soon as you start saying the only other thing, that's usually where you probably should have stopped. So to record barter transactions for. So right there in this little hump, if you're listening very carefully, this little hump is me taking a breath. I can hear myself breathing in right there, right? So hold on. Actions for the boom. So I'm going to clip the track like right here. And what I'll do is, as I've shown you a few times, I'll click and drag down to get both tracks selected. And then we're going to use the split tool, right? That's to cut the track. And now I can pretty much jump to the end. I just need to find like my conclusion, right? So I zoom all the way back out on the track because that makes it easier to get kind of across to the end quickly. And notice there's a break in the audio here. There's a good chance that that's because I was done talking about the classes and then finally getting into wrapping up. So let's see if I'm right. I may not be. I'll zoom back in. Forget where, I think it was here. Okay. And actually, I forgot I did this. What I actually did was exactly what I referenced at the very beginning of the editing portion of today's video. I clapped on the timeline. I decided I was going to edit all that out, and so I gave myself this cue. So that's how I was able to quickly identify where I need to cut. So this little spike here is me clapping. So this is where I want to cut it. So again, I'm going to select both tracks, use the splitter tool, and then I'm going to zoom back out. Notice when I click the splitter tool, it deselects. So I'm going to reselect these two tracks in the region that I want to cut out. Delete key on my keyboard. Grab these two, click and drag to the left. And that cuts a good couple of minutes out of the video, which is good. It's always better if you can make the video shorter.
I like how the thumbnail has you clapping.
Oh yeah, that's true. All right, so let's see if it's kind of a smooth transition from where I had started closing up here and then where I conclude. Let's see. We just want to make sure it's smooth. Simple as it is, you can do this all day long with as many people as you need to record barter transactions for. So there you have it, how to handle barter transactions when you have somebody who is a customer and also a vendor and balances to settle on both sides, and for some reason we don't want to keep it clean and just pay each other. Then this is how you do it, nice and clear and clean. And so that transition worked out perfectly because I had planned it, right? I knew as I was recording that I wanted to cut that out, so I paused so there'd be a break in the audio track. I clapped so I would see in editing exactly where to cut, and then I started recording again, you know, knowing exactly how I wanted to make sure it was going to be a logical transition to the conclusion. So I'm just going to play out the rest of the video. I don't think I'm going to edit anything else, but just in case, I've learned the lesson the hard. I'll tell you an extreme lesson that I learned along these lines, because sometimes at this point I've been inclined to say, all right, I don't need to edit anything. I'm just going to let it rip and process the video. So here's how I learned this lesson the hard way, not to ever do that. A few years back, I was working with another company, producing content for them, and I did that very thing, and I had forgotten, because it had been a few days between when I recorded and when I edited it, that apparently while I was recording the video, the phone rang. And it was like maybe the third or fourth time I'd gotten interrupted while trying to record this video, and I had to start over, and I got really frustrated. And as I picked up and hung up the phone, I shouted out a few expletives, and I left that in the video, which then got sent to the client, who didn't think they needed to check, and uploaded it to their YouTube channel, until one of their viewers actually reached out to them and said, you may want to check the video ad, and they gave the time, you know, the minutes and seconds. And sure enough, there was me cursing at the person who had called me on the phone. So always, always, always play the whole thing through, no matter how certain you might be that there's nothing more to edit. Use a barter clearing account, bank account, get paid through that account, make the payment through that account. It's fake money, and then you can either write a check if you owe them the difference, or if they owe you, then of course you're going to get paid. You'll record a deposit into your bank account and then offset that the same way through what would have been a positive balance in the barter clearing. So you'd effectively be transferring the balance from here over to here if that's the way that it went. As always, you know where to find me if you have any questions. Now, as I start that final conclusion, and I always started off the same way because I've formed the habit over the years, And you can hear the spike in my voice go up. So this is the part where I want to bring my video from this track back into the mix. So here I am. I clicked on the track. I'm actually in the video part, right? And remember, I had dropped the opacity down to 0. So I'm just going to slide that right back up to 100%. But before I do that, I have to add a transition, because if I don't add a transition in the form of a custom animation, then it's going to do that sort of retroactively. Since this track is clipped, it's going to do it from back here. So you have to first add a custom, actually I don't have to add a custom animation. In this case, I can just use the full opacity. It's the exact same thing. So when I add that to selected media, notice all that does is it adds the transition and increases the opacity to 100%. I'll zoom in a little bit and I always just replay these things. Whenever I do an edit, I replay it to make sure it's smooth. Over to here, if that's the way that it went. As always, you know where to find me if you have any questions, concerns, comments. And notice, I know when I'm doing that sort of exit outro thing, and so I'm looking right at the camera. And that's the point where I want to bring my picture back in. Feedback, complaints, whatever you got, give it to me. I'll take it. I'll give you answers. If I've had the experience, you're welcome to it. As always, I hope you had some fun here, learned something along the way. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you on the web. Okay, and then I want to clip it like as quickly as possible after I finish talking. So we're going to zoom all the way in. I'm going to back up right here. But I also pay attention to my face, because sometimes my face will look a little funny. I usually try to smile. There it is. Right? So I want to clip it right at the point of smiling so that when the video stops on YouTube, that's what people are going to see before it sort of goes dark, right? And so I'm going to just select the 2 tracks, hit the splitter to clip it one last time.
And I guess that implies that you don't use an outro.
I don't, because the truth is, when you look at your YouTube stats, you'll find most people don't even watch it till the end, so there doesn't seem to be much point. I mean, you can. I just don't bother. I put the intro in front to get the branding in there, because that's what everyone's going to see. At the end, I'm like, who cares? If you watch your stats, very few. It's the funny thing is, it's the people who do stick it out are your like ideal target audience, but they don't need the outro. They're like your diehard, love your content, and they're going to watch it all the way through. But you'll see, when you watch the graphs on the YouTube stats, it dips very quickly. Usually after about 3 minutes, you see the viewer count drop dramatically, and relatively very few, stick it out to the end.
Does that mean that a optimal video length is maybe around 4 minutes? Or?
Nope. Some people think so, but I disagree, and here's why. Because of, like I just said, I'm not going after the middle of the curve. I'm actually specifically going for the people who are at the end of that curve. That's who I want. Those are the people who are going to call me and want to hire me for help, or tell others about me because they can't say enough good things about my content, right? So I'm not trying to target the widest number of people, and if you think of the bell curve of the viewer count, I don't want to go in the middle of the bell. I want the people who are at the end. Yeah. The other thing is, and this is more recent, and this is important stuff to stay on top of, Google over the recent years has come to favor longer videos. They actually view a video that's less than 3 minutes as likely to be sort of spammy or promotional in nature. So you actually want to do videos. I think ideal length is like 5 to 7 minutes. But I often go to 10 or 15 minutes. There's a difference, though, when you consider that our genre of content that we're talking about doing here is educational in nature. So you're going to be able to, capture an audience with a better attention span because they really want to watch this stuff. You're not selling something to them. You're teaching them how to do something. So there's all those things to consider. And then real quick, I just want to walk through some of the settings for publishing, and then we'll end here. So when I click share here, I always go to custom production. Yes, you might think you want to do it for YouTube, but I don't. I do custom production, new custom production. MP4 is the format that we want. Next. I always just pan through these tabs just to make sure, because I've had the case where for some reason some setting got reset. So I don't really care about the controller. So I just leave it. I'll go to size, right? Because I have the reduced aspect ratio, because I try to cut out the taskbar. It's not your perfect 1920 by 1080, nor should it be. So this is fine. I go to video settings. We always want this to be bitrate and not quality, and you want the highest possible quality. Yes, it's going to make a much bigger video file, but you're going to get much better quality out of it. And then audio settings, you always want, again, the best possible quality audio out of here. And once again, it will make a larger file, but audio especially is really important. You just want the highest possible quality. Why not? It's not actually costing me any extra. Media is cheap these days. So if you're worried about storage, get an account with G Suite or Box or any of these file sharing services. They all have plans now for like unlimited storage and bandwidth. So you can stick your video files in one of those services, so you don't have to worry about loading up your hard drive with these large files.
But don't render it in that service.
Right. Always render to a local folder and then copy it over afterwards. Just like you wouldn't have a live QuickBooks file in a shared folder like that, it can corrupt the video file. And over here, I usually just zip past this part because I don't care about any of this. And then we get to here, and then you just want to make sure that you're producing to the right folder. It remembers the last folder that you produced to. So I have the folder open in Windows already where this is going. So I'm just going to copy the file path from that folder and paste that in here. And that's the folder that it's going to process to. My E drive is an external hard drive. They even advise you against doing that, but I've never had a problem rendering to an external hard drive. And then boom, that's it. It's going to process. Once it's processed, I'll have an MP4 file that I can upload to YouTube and Vimeo, and of course my website in Kajabi. So anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Sorry I went over, but I hope that you found it useful and worthwhile, especially for those who couldn't stick around and have to catch the recording.
Tina had a question about whether we use Camtasia to edit our drone video. I don't know if she was referring to mine or to yours that you posted on Facebook. But as far as editing this background that I've had going on, it's you know, just a little loop of around my house, and the going up portion was recorded on the drone, and then when I brought the video file onto my computer, then I got to the point where I wanted to reverse it, right, and make it a back and forth loop. And there is no tool inside of Camtasia to allow you to do a reverse. And so after a little bit of playing around, I found an online tool that allowed me to upload the video, and they reversed it for me. So then I took the two video files, the one in forward and one in reverse, and then I used Camtasia to push those two together.
So the reason I asked is that my husband and I have an unusual business in that I do bookkeeping, and I'm trying to explore content as a possible way to kind of, you know, move into that direction more. But my husband's a musician, and so, you know, I'm trying to get the most bang for my buck to be able to record a music piece that he's doing that he wants to put out there, and also have a product, you know, for content developed for me for bookkeeping related things. And so I was trying to see if Camtasia or another product might be able to fit both those needs.
I use Camtasia to edit my drone video. I was concerned the first time, especially with like very high res video, that Camtasia would cause a reduction in quality, but I haven't found that to be the case. Although if you're like my drone can record in 4K, and Camtasia doesn't have the capacity to render a 4K video. So if I really want that 4K, you know, very high resolution quality output, then I would need to find other software to use, you know, that will render 4K.
One of the other questions that Steve had, he had to go get ready for his first student, but when you were showing Camtasia and you had the different tracks, he was curious if you bring in a video that you've recorded, say, you know, your drone, and you're doing a talk over the top of that, does it automatically find the video and the audio and split it? Or is that a feature of Camtasia when you're doing your presentation for content management, and it automatically splits your audio versus your video? Or are you managing that through your audio interface box somehow?
So
Okay.
when I do the screen recording, using Camtasia, it will drop in two separate tracks, one for the screen part and one that includes both the audio and that little picture-in-picture video, right? Those are the two tracks we were working with this morning. If I bring in, well, the drone video doesn't have any audio because it doesn't record audio. It's just video, but I learned a trick recently where you can use like screen recording software for your mobile device. Like I use DU Recorder. And so the next time I shoot drone footage, what I may do is run that, and I'll have to have a headset connected, like Bluetooth to my phone. So I can actually do a voiceover. You can also do voiceover after the fact. But when I bring in a video from some other source, let's say that wasn't recorded from Camtasia, depending on what I use to do that recording, it should have encoding built into it that Camtasia will be able to do what I showed earlier in the video, where I can right-click the track and it will allow me to separate audio and video. Right? It just depends on how whatever I use to do the recording is configured to create that recording. Right? In some cases, I've seen where it's both audio and video are just combined into the track, and there's no capability of splitting it up. So,
Okay.
but the trick is you bring on the media, onto its own track and right-click it. And if it's possible to split up the audio and video, you'll see the option lit up to do that. And then once you choose that, it will break up the audio and video into two separate tracks.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
Did you get that idea about using the DU recorder from Lisa's husband? And he actually had a live stream of his drone footage, which I thought was pretty slick.
I saw that, and it made me, and I noticed my drone software can do a live stream to YouTube or Facebook, right? It has the option in the app that runs when I'm flying the drone. But so that wasn't, I didn't even realize his was done live, but I just thought about it when I noticed that he was clearly doing a voiceover in real time as he was flying his drone. I just thought about, okay, how could he have done that? And I did ask Lisa, and eventually she got back to me with the answer. But before she did, I actually just searched for it on YouTube, and I saw a video where in like the first minute of the video, I realized, oh, he's using a screen recorder. Of course, that makes total sense. And then after that, I was like, okay, now I know exactly what to do. So, yep. But for most use cases, Camtasia works really well for editing live action video. I do, a number of videos where I shoot live action from my DSLR. And what I do actually is I record two audios. I record this audio, which is tied to Camtasia, but then I also mic up to the DSLR and I get that audio. This audio is better quality, but I do that because then what I'm able to do is use the audio track from the DSLR, which is for the video part, to line the tracks up, between what I recorded with the DSLR and what I recorded with Camtasia. Remember, when I do that clap, it creates the spikes on both of those audio tracks, and I just line them up so I know exactly where to clip them. And then I rip out the DSLR's audio because this is the audio I want to keep, but now the videos will be in sync with the audio. So it's a sort of more advanced trick that years ago I taught it when I did a whole webinar on Camtasia. It was like a 3-hour webinar. So I can certainly go over that again at some point if anybody wants me to.
What is your audio interface box that you're using? I think it's to your right.
It's well, this is a mixer. It's a Behringer mixer that it's recommended to buy with the headset and mic that I'm using, which is Audio Technica. I can send you the links. I have a page on my website that's called Tools for Working Remotely, where I have a whole mind map that you can browse, and included in that is the links to Amazon to buy this stuff if you want it.
Yeah, he's been test driving some stuff, and he hasn't found anything that he's super happy about yet.
Yeah, this one I've been really happy with. The only thing that sucks is you're tethered to it. Like, it's not like I would love to have something that was this good quality, but Bluetooth, so I could like walk around when I wanted to. But anyway.
Yeah, I understand.
All right. On that note, I'm going to let you all go. The video actually just finished processing, so that's good. So I'll get all of this uploaded, at some point by tomorrow, and I'll send my usual weekly email out letting you all know when it's ready.
Thank you.
All right.